Listeners, welcome back. It's once again time for Maya, my yoga audio, and I'm your host, Megan Morgan. Our next absolutely incredible guest is named Jessie Bliss. Jessie is the founder and artistic director of the Roots and Wings Project, which is a politically charged, socially transformative, project-based theater company with a mission to provide stage and space for voices of the unnamed, unknown, and misunderstood. She is also the author of the chapbook and companion manual, I Love Myself Golden, originally written for incarcerated young women and core curriculum at Occidental College. I first met Jessie about 8 years ago when she hosted a writing workshop right here in Sacramento. And she presented that book, and we have remained connected ever since. I purchased several copies of I Love Myself Golden and have found it to be a continued source of comfort and an incredible gift to share with friends and women of all ages and backgrounds. The list of Jessie's accomplishments and work is impressive. That's why she's here and why I asked her to be here. She's an international playwright, a director, producer, actress, poet, and a veteran arts educator. Also, she's a groundbreaking storyteller, my favorite thing. She's experienced art as life-saving and in turn has dedicated her life's work to offering art to others of all ages, backgrounds, and socio-economic standings. She attributes art as core to her own healing and wellness, knowing the power of what it can do to reshape lives, resist oppression, and help raise awareness on matters of civil and human rights. Her poems, articles, and curriculum have been published widely, and her recent project, Matriarch, consists of monologues that shine light on the critical need to disrupt patriarchy. She directed and executive produced Luminous Streets, a site-specific theatrical tour addressing women's survival and the pursuit of justice. And she was also a producer of KPFK 90.7 FM's program, Think Outside the Cage, for several years. Jessie specializes in writing curriculum and teaching theater and writing of various forms to people of all ages and backgrounds, including underserved and incarcerated populations. In addition to working with some of the most prestigious organizations in the nation, she's also been awarded grants to support workshops in juvenile halls, men's and women's prisons, as well as being a recipient of the Cultural Pathways Grant from the California Arts Council. Jessie is also an incredible mom to a growing daughter and a woman who's making waves all over California and the world. Jessie, welcome to the show, and just wow, and thank you for making the time to be here with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, no, you're just, for those of you watching on YouTube, Jessie is a glowing ray of light with long flowing hair and like a peach colored dress and just glowing skin and a beautiful smile. So we are so lucky to be with her today. And Jessie, you do so many things and you're so incredibly passionate and talented. Would you, because I just read this whole big long, and I feel like that was even a shortened, all about you. Would you just tell us about you, who you are in this moment, and like what's taking up space in your mind, your heart, and your body right now?
The first word that comes to me is justice. Right now, I'm very focused on art as an instrument of healing and art as a vehicle for justice. I think it's been that way for me for a very long time and continues to be so. I think as we're faced with seemingly insurmountable circumstances in our society, I continuously turn to art because I feel like it is an offering that can really give us the breath and space to process what we're dealing with all around us. Critical matters of, all types of injustice, from racism to our environment to the inequities of, the education system and, economic inequity and on and on and on. I think all of these matters can be, at least for myself, most effectively processed through art. So that's why I always end up turning to art, and specifically art that's created by women, because our voices have been kept down for so long, and there's still this concerted global effort to keep us quiet and to quote unquote keep us in our place. So I think the more that we not just speak out, but tell our stories and share our perspective and our humanity, I think the more things will shift toward justice, because we've been really left out of the picture. So to, bring our voice in is gonna it's gonna create a shift. But of course, I think it's a fight. I think it's a battle. And I just try to stay in the ring, and I do get bloody. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to get right back up again and keep fighting and try my best to, refresh myself, because this is real. This is no joke. The work that we do right now is very hard, harder than it's been, I feel, in the past.
Yeah. There's some I listen to a lot of podcasts and do like a lot of reading, and I heard someone, and they were in Australia or New Zealand, weirdly, and they said this is the time, like right before there's massive social and cultural change. It's almost like the birth, they kind of compared it to the birthing process. Like we're right in transition right now, and it's always the hardest right before there's that big shift, right? Because there's the resistance to keep things the same, and then there's people pushing like, no, we've got to progress. And it's that like tightness, right, of those two things coming together. And it is kind of a battle. It's interesting that you said like, I'm in it, I'm going to get bloody. Like this is sometimes what it takes to, push things forward. And I was going to ask you about I Love Myself Golden, but I feel like I'll ask that after, and more about your other projects that you are in right now, because I know I Love Myself Golden is like ongoing. But what have you been? There's Matriarch, The Joyride, Women at Work, Luminous Streets. And there's
Yes.
another one you mentioned earlier. What's
Well,
that work doing?
you know what? It's been a really interesting trajectory for the Roots and Wings project, my theater company, in the pandemic, because, we've been in production from like 2018 to the end of last year. So this is the first time I made a deliberate pause, because we worked straight through the pandemic when a lot of other companies shut down. We kept
Mm-hmm.
going. And that is because in 2019, right before the pandemic, we did a theatrical immersive tour through downtown Los Angeles. And it was 5 plays written by 5 different women, about women's survival in pursuit of justice. It was a really heavy undertaking that people told me I could not do time and again. They said, that's not possible. You can't bring crowds through downtown. You can't get legal permission. So it took years to make it happen. And it did happen. And it was beyond my wildest dreams. It was really epic the way it turned out. I mean, I'm so grateful, for what that project was. So when the pandemic hit, we were steeled for difficult circumstances. I mean, we had rehearsed that play for 6 months in Skid Row, in the elements of downtown. We went through a lot down there. So I put together artists who had worked together, in those circumstances, knew each other, loved each other, trusted each other, and had a profound artistic ability. And we made a play out of a vintage convertible called The Joyride. And this idea that, when the world is on fire, we will claim our joy. And the play centers around 4 friends, all dealing with circumstances relevant to today, matters that we all struggle with right now, matters of the pandemic, matters of racism, matters of struggling to be an artist in a society that doesn't care about art. And so, yeah, we rolled that out, and it was just a pilot, but it was absolutely incredible. It went on the back burner because we were in, process with Houston Coalition Against Hate. They're a really extraordinary organization. They do very powerful work in Houston. And so we were supposed to fly out there to perform our long running show, Matriarch. But with the pandemic, we went through a long struggle to get that show up. It was difficult. And it's a show we know very well because it's been running for years. But to perform it in the pandemic was hard. And we went through a lot of different strategies through the changes until finally we performed it late last year, in person, twice outside, and then it streamed for a month. And then after that, we were truly exhausted from, just working through the pandemic. and trying to understand a circumstance that had no rules about it, no rhyme or reason, nothing to follow. And so this is the first time in, like, I guess 5 years that we have taken time. I would not call it a break because we've been doing a lot of grant writing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've been also fighting way too hard to keep our program going at the women's prison. I mean, it's been a true battle. So that's also taken a lot of energy. And there's been many times, in fact, recently, where we almost had to make a call to stop. Like, this is ridiculous. And we're just going to have to stop doing the program. And then something happens to shift, and we stay in and we keep going. But that's been really hard. So we've sort of had to just, we grew really fast, so we had to take a minute to recalibrate and get some, infrastructure support, and just take a minute and kind of, redirect our sails. So that's
Yeah.
where things are right now, and then I'm trying to nurture myself as an individual artist, as my own human with needs to write. Just, you know,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, the work we do is very collaborative. And, when we're in production, there's like usually at least 15 people on board, and we work very closely. But I find in order to be effective in those capacities, I really have to take a minute to myself and, deal with myself on the page and write, and just get clear about where I'm coming from, and, what stories are coming through me. And once I can see some vision of my own, it really helps me to be more present creatively with other people.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's the perfect segue into I love myself golden, because I know you told the story in the writing class, and you've told it since, because you only release, like, open up sales for the book a few times a year. And I'm hoping you would regale our listeners with the tale of how that story came to you, how it progressed with the art, how it progressed with getting out in the prison system, and then beyond that, right? Because now the public loves it too.
Yes, I had been at Central Juvenile Hall for 12 years, and I had been on the special handling unit
Mhm,
where the young women are kept on lockdown,
mhm.
and it was inhumane. I would see a young girl one week pregnant, and the next week not pregnant any longer, but her baby not with her. And she'd be lactating and crying and asking me for advice. And at that time, I was not a mother. I showed as much love and support as I knew how, and gave what I could. But in my own parting out of the capacity of Central Juvenile Hall, because I did become a mom, and I was going in when I was pregnant, and then I had to call it one and say, you know what? I need to not be here anymore in this youth prison during this time in my life. And so I had an idea. It just literally came to me in a bar with colleagues after leaving the jail. I thought, oh my goodness, like, I need to leave them with something, but what, they don't have anything. They need something to read, to touch, to refer to. And so I thought, I was referencing what to expect when you're expecting, which is it'd be offensive to them and completely irrelevant. But I thought it's something like that. It's a manual. And then I thought of, oh, I need to make them something. I need to make them something. And so, I can't say I live by the message of the book. I can say I want to. And I'm humble to the message of the book because I feel it came through me. I told myself I wasn't going to write the book till it was crystal clear in my head what needed to be said, and that I would do it in one sitting, because I feel so much work gets lost because we don't have the time or we don't have the energy. So I sat in Boyle Heights at La Monarca Bakery at 6 a.m. sharp, and I had alphanumeric's paintings. I had piles of her visual work, which is very beautiful and profound. And I knew which ones I wanted to use. And so I just sat down in the seat and told myself, you're going to write from the bottom of your guts, your heart, your soul. You're going to be a channel. You're going to listen to the ancestors. And you're going to honor what comes through you right now. And I just did the whole entire book in a few hours, and then let it alone, went back and did some minor edits. And then, poets and writers who I admire and love very deeply, they got behind the project, and they had, supported some workshops that inspired the writing of the book. And then it's palm size so that it can be hidden in the bra, because everything eventually is going to get taken in there, if not eventually right away. So I made it palm size so that they could hide it in their bra and maybe pass it and circulate it a little bit more easily. We had to bind it with PCV glue in the beginning because in youth prison you can't even have staples. So we had to bind everything by hand. But we did release the book publicly in Los Angeles, and that was the first moment where we went, oh, interesting, how weird that people not incarcerated would relate to the book. That really surprised us. And actually, the title came when I was together with Alfie in person, conceptualizing the visuals for the book, which she created the cover for it. But I Love Myself Golden. I was literally breastfeeding my daughter while Alfie and I were speaking, and we were talking about logistics. This sounds insane when we were like, we're the only people that will ever believe this story, but we were talking logistics about the book. And my daughter is breastfeeding, and all of a sudden she lifts her head up and she said, I love myself. And we just could not believe what we heard. She was a year and a half. She was a baby. She was a baby. She had like a bald head and was like wobbling when she walked. And she said that. And it took our breath away. We were completely dumbfounded. And we knew in that moment that the book was important and meant to be, and it was something we should go forward with. And then the golden part, her name Aurelia means golden, and I just felt like, yeah, the golden needed to be there. There was something about I love myself golden. There's something like about that, just like a washing over of ourselves, because we're taught not to love ourselves. I was conditioned not to love myself. That's so the book to me is like, again, something that I strive for, something that I want to live by. But yeah, and over the years, I think the book itself shows the unity and it shows the humanity that we all have, because we all feel trapped by something. And in our society, when it comes to women in prison, it's them and it's us. There is no them and us. There's only us. And the book proves that point. If it resonates out here and it also resonates in there, then doesn't that say we all feel trapped by something, and we all have wants and needs, and we all are raised not to love ourselves? So some of us are unlucky and we end up in prison, but then some of us are blessed and we get to stay out here, you know.
Yeah, all the waves of that. I took that book, I Love Myself Golden, on like a women's retreat. I don't know if you remember this. It was probably about 6 months after I met you. And I knew, I was like, I gotta buy it like 4 or 5 copies of whatever you had at
I
that thing,
remember.
because I need to give this to people. And the people that I ended up gifting it to at this women's retreat were just like so overcome with emotion, and we would take turns reading it aloud, and the words were so moving. And then I was on another podcast of a friend of mine, Michaela Daystar, who's a Reiki energy practitioner, and it's about reading, kind of excerpting a piece of poetry, then talking about how it makes us feel. So I read an excerpt of the book on there, and same thing. It was like, the people that follow her channel were like, what? Like, where can I get this book? And I was like, you need to follow this person and look at her website, because it comes out when it's available, and that's where you can buy it. So the ripple effect of that book, and I think for me the important part of it too, is people knowing that it was written intentionally initially for those who are incarcerated, because I want people to think about what that means, and any preconceived notions or judgments they might have about that this is for everyone, right? At least exactly like you said, it's not an us or them. This is
Well,
about women.
thank you for bringing that up, because it's very problematic, the fallacies behind who's in prison. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
seem like it could be possible how many domestic violence survivors there are in there. But I am telling you, Megan, in our workshops, it's usually more than half of the women, more than half in there behind domestic violence. They're in there for protecting themselves or protecting their children, or they're in there for running drugs for a man when they didn't have shelter, they didn't have any money. And so to be criminalized for protecting yourself is something completely incomprehensible to me. But to
Mm-hmm.
them doing time and being treated like property, not people. I mean, if you get a sunburn in prison, you're going to get written up because you're property of the state. And so that sunburn could cost the state money down the line when you get skin cancer. So, yes.
What?
Yes.
That is, I mean, there's so much people don't know.
There
There's
is so
so
much
much.
people don't know, and that's why I, keep fighting to sit with the women. And it's usually not till I sit with them lately that I feel sane, because out here a lot of times I'm like, wait, I'm a single mother, I'm an artist. Why am I so compelled to keep fighting to get into these walls? Because they don't want us in there. Like, it has been in the pandemic a great excuse for them to keep the programming out. So they've
Mm.
made concerted efforts to drive us out. People are driving from Sacramento and San Diego to Chino and being turned away on a repeated basis. And they do it to wear people down until they stop trying to go in. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
when I sit with the women, I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, I remember this is why I'm here, because you are paying for the cruel underbelly of the society that we live in. All women are, are treated, in some sort of way that isn't right, but they're the ones that are really, like, really paying with their lives, you know.
Wow. Oh, so part of I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. Because I know just before we started recording, you were saying like this is possible today, because today is a day where you're not in the prison. I don't know if there's a way you can elaborate at all about what your schedule is like in terms of the programming you do now, and not necessarily where. I don't know if you're allowed to reveal locations, but is it specifically the women's prison right now, and then the men's prison is more the specific projects, and it's like two weekends a month? Is that right?
Yeah, for the men's prison, I did a pilot in 2018 at Lancaster Men's Prison, which was an extraordinary experience. I've worked with the young men, for my 12 years at Central, and then I've worked at different youth prisons with men, but this was my first time facilitating a really intensive program in a men's high security prison, which was it was a beautiful experience. And actually, one of the men that I met in there was incarcerated for 29 years, and he led our downtown immersive theatrical tour right after being released from prison. He'd only been out a year. And so here he was leading all these people through the streets.
Mm-hmm.
There's other men that I've kept close with, and I think those men taught me a lot about, oh, this is what it looks like when people take responsibility for themselves and when they're committed to healing. It was just a beautiful experience. But then with the pandemic, I had contact with the men only through paper packets. I wrote a whole bunch of curriculum in conjunction with Tia Chuchas and Luis Rodriguez. I wrote a lot of curriculum that went in to the men's prison, but then was stopped at the women's prison. We had $500 worth of curriculum hit that prison, and they wouldn't release it. They wouldn't let the women have it. They said there were inappropriate components in the packet, but wouldn't tell us what was inappropriate. I'm like, inappropriate, okay. So it's been this fight to kind of make our way back in. So as of this moment, we're officially every first and third Saturday. But there are many times we drive out there and can't get in, or get in and then the yard is recalled, which means all the women have to go back down and go back to their cells for whatever reason. Maybe somebody didn't turn up an account. So it's been about reaching to people who we know are in this work with us, that can show solidarity and help us. It's also been about, walking to the units, physically walking to the units and saying, I need these women to come with me now. So we've just been trying different ways, but we know that the warden of CIW is not a fan of programming and doesn't want this programming for the women. So there's a lot of concerted effort to really stop it, and they're going through, it's an unspeakably hard time in there. But again, I feel what they go through is a microcosm of our experience.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think? I mean,
Yeah, I keep thinking of how, in a weird comparison, when I taught art for a year at a kid's middle school here in Sacramento, and it was just a part-time position. It was 2 days a week with the intention that it was going to go full-time. And of course, it was an arts program, so the arts funding got cut, and they were like, sorry, we could, like, I wasn't even really sure if I even still had a part-time job. So I ended up leaving. And I felt so bad for the kid. Like I sat down with the kids and like some of them were crying and they're just like, was it us? Like, were we bad? And did we do bad? I'm like, absolutely not. This has nothing to do with your behavior, who you are as people. It's one of those things, unfortunately, that they see the somehow the tangible value of math and science and geography. And I'm not disagreeing that those aren't important, but the arts, like the best part of the whole year was the year-end talent show. And my God, those kids got up there, spoken word, sang, they had written things, they'd made these beautiful paintings. I mean, every art form you can think of had come out of that. And I'm not saying it was me, but it was their time in that class that allowed them to think outside of all of the other stuff that structures their day. And kids need that, and teens need that, and adults need that too. And like, imagine, like, yes, I understand the consequences of actions and in terms of the prison system, and I get myself in trouble sometimes talking with people about it, that we don't know the whole story. And like you said, like at least 50% of the women who are incarcerated are there pretty much as a direct result of trying to protect themselves from domestic violence. So how's this person who's trying to save their life, their kid's life, not need programming to survive their time inside? Like, to me, the ramifications of that are like, even if and when they do get out, what are they coming out with? What have they
You're bringing
experienced?
up, this is a key point, what you're bringing up. Prison's punitive. It is a joke for the word rehabilitation to even be used because that is not happening in there. It is punitive. And, I know an incredible woman doing a life sentence. She will never get released, but hopefully a miracle will happen. She deserves to come out of there. But she said, it's like beating a dead horse. This is her words. This
Mm-hmm.
idea of punishment that never ends. So yeah, I mean, you're really making such a great point because they do not aim to heal or rehabilitate. They aim to punish, and that's exactly what's going on in these systems. But I think out here, I see things very similarly, and it's probably from the work I do inside, but I don't think it's different. I think it's more disguised. I think there are a lot of punishments for us speaking out. And I think, right, there's a lot of celebration of our liberation when I'm like, okay, so we've been, only not owned by men since the 1860s. We've only been voting a short time. We've only been in the workforce a short time, and that's because we're cheaper labor. You know what I mean? Like, we've only been in college 100 years. Like, our advancements are very new. And then, there's just a lot of unspoken elements about our existence, I feel, and the dangers of being a woman.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
I wonder if in all of that, and we were talking about that a little bit before we started recording. So how do you, Jessie Bliss, the woman, the mom, the trailblazer, show up for yourself? Like self-care practices, any non-negotiables in your personal life, like in the midst of all you do?
I have many non-negotiables because if I'm not writing and I'm not practicing
Mm-hmm.
my craft, it's very challenging for me to be good to those around me or to even have clear perspective. So I get up at 4 a.m. and it sounds like torture rather than self-care. But for me, it's actually self-care because that early hour allows me to exercise, do yoga, or ride my stationary bike. I pray and I meditate every day. That's non-negotiable. Um, and that quiet hour really gives me a lot of peace and sanctity. When everybody's sleeping and it's dark outside and I'm up and I've got my coffee and it's just that quiet space, it's really healing for me and very grounding because I think right now my goal currently is to just ground as much as I can. I just am always trying to ground myself, knowing that there is a lot of chaos in the world right now. And the more grounded I can become, the better I am equipped to deal with everything going on. But it's always a battle because I feel the demand of my schedule is not very friendly. It's just too much. It's way too much. So I hope in the coming years of my life things can let up and lighten some.
And they will. They will when
Thank
we were
you.
chatting about that with me having
Right?
older daughters and you having a young one. And wondered if we could touch on her a little bit, and you don't have to say anything about her name or her age, but I'm thinking about your hopes and your dreams for your daughter, because she's absorbing so much from you being her mom, and the environments and the activism, like she must be immersed in some way. And to think at 18 months, I love myself, for her to stop nursing and say those words out loud. I mean, what the heck?
Ooh. Yeah, that's what I said when I met her. I was like, wow, she seems like such an old soul. And I started taking her on small tours for my plays when she was 9 months old. That was her first one that went from Los Angeles to San Francisco. So she started going out on the road with me, and then she's been backstage for everything I've done. Or, we had a radio show on KPFK for a long time. I'd bring her with. We'd just put the headphones, like the actors would help me when I couldn't be backstage, and they'd make sure to put headphones on her during the parts that she just shouldn't hear. But yeah, I think growing up in that, I'd imagine it has an impact on her. I mean, right now, I am really focused on, creating a different space for her than the one that I had. And trying not to even compare the two, but I want her to be empowered. I want her to feel valuable. I want her to feel loved. I want her to feel seen. I want her to feel confident, and really stand up for herself in this life, as a young woman of color, and growing up in an urban environment with all the challenges that come with all of this. I really want her to feel equipped to stand up to all of this. And when it comes to the arts, I don't push them on her. She's very involved in music. Actually, she loves music very, very much, and she's super literary. She reads a lot, but I am very careful not to push her, or not to, put her in anything that's professional level. I'll let her choose that for herself, because I think the process, her going through the organic process of art over and over as a child, is going to really pay off for her as a woman. But it's scary raising a little girl in the world that we're in, and there's a lot of conversations that no parent can be prepared to have, that we have to have. When George Floyd got murdered, I felt I had to tell her, because I knew she was going to pick it up, and I didn't want her to find out from somebody else. And she started throwing things around our house that day. She started throwing things and crying and screaming, and I've never ever seen my child react to anything like that. And I canceled all the plans we had that day, and I took her out to the ocean, because I knew she needed something. So it's like, the things that kids have to be aware of, from COVID to racism, like, this world that we're living in, it's rough for them. So thank you for asking that question, because as an artist and a mom, it's always a fine line. And I feel my own liberation is somehow tied into her well-being. And that when I turn my back on, and I know you get this with those two gorgeous grown daughters, when I turn my back on myself and my own voice and my own care, I'm essentially impacting her. So, you know what I mean? So that hard work of my own liberation is connected to her.
You hit the nail on the on the head. I started to tear up there, because when I've seen my daughters both do that as adults now, living separately with their respective partners, they're both finished school now, but like working.
Congratulations.
And thank you. But they have learned that from me too, right? To like work and work and work and work and do all this stuff, and they exhaust themselves pretty regularly. And then when I call them on it, they're like, well, who do you think we learned it from? But not in the nasty way. It's more of a like just reflecting back, and I'm like, I know I've like got that personality type, because I'm so passionate about the things that I want to do and be in this world, and I wanted to be a good role model for you, but also learning to bring in that they don't really, well, my youngest one used to do yoga with me a lot, but bringing in that part, like, what is your yoga? And if it's not meditation, and if it's not the physical practice of yoga, what does stepping back and self-care look like for you? Because you need to do that sometimes. And for us to keep having that conversation as they move through adulthood, so that they don't, make those same mistakes. Oh, and the other thing you said really resonated so much. that your healing is so tied up in creating that relationship with her and presenting views and lenses on the world that you didn't necessarily have growing up. And it's the same for me. I'm just like, I feel like I'm becoming my own mother and grandmother through mothering them, right? Because those people were missing from my life. And I was thinking about this recently. I'm like, there really weren't a whole lot of female role models other than what was like on TV and stuff, and kind of distant family members. And I'm like, I'm not gonna like let that get bog me down in this moment. Like there's so much from lack that I then tried to turn into an experience with them to ensure that they didn't experience that. And that heals something in me too. So I feel like you really nailed that and are continuing to.
I agree with what you're saying. Yeah, it is, there is something very healing. But I mean, I grew up with a lot of trauma, and it sounds like you did too. And, so it's this constant dance with it, because I feel, no matter how much healing a person does, we can't erase our experiences. Roots and wings, it's like, our roots are real and they make us who we are, so it's like I try to learn to dance with it. Like, oh, okay, wow, that's still there. And just try to smile at it and love it. And you know what I mean? Because it comes up when you're raising somebody. You remember things and you're like, wow, I don't believe I went through that. That's crazy. And I think when you grow up and you're raised around a lot of trauma and you're raised to feel like your life isn't important and you're not an important person, it kind of defines your motherhood, right? It's like it makes you're always mothering in conjunction with that, I feel, or at least I am. You know what I mean? It's a battle, it's an inner battle, because I'm like, I'm doing for her what was never done for me, so I don't really know what it looks like, but I can kind of feel it. So I'm just like winging it all the time.
Yeah. No, I totally, and I'm actually glad you brought up Roots and Wings again, because that's the name of your company. And I know you've gone through a big change. You just rebranded and re-released your website. And so I was going to ask you something you're personally and or professionally really proud of. And I don't know if that's one of them. I suspect that it is. How would you answer that question? But and if it's not specifically Roots and Wings, I'd still love to talk more about that after too.
What I'm proud of?
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Something you're
really,
really proud.
really, I'm really proud of the collaborative work we've created in the Roots and Wings project. I am so proud of that. I'm proud of all the artists that have come together time and again over the years and just literally breathed fire and given every ounce of heart and blood and bones and life force to the work. I'm very, very proud of that. That just lights up my soul, because I feel like with the Roots and Wings project, you can't pretend, you can't phone it in. Like, you have to do the work for real, and it's hard. It's hard for me. It's hard for all of us. So I think the fact that that everybody comes together in great commitment to do the real work is just something that I hold with great gratitude. It's been a
Mm-hmm.
great, great gift in my life.
Yeah, I believe it. And it's the rootsandwingsproject.com, right?
Yes,
Is it
exactly.
like the
Yeah,
rootsandwingsproject.com?
exactly. That's the website.
It's beautiful. I
Thank
love the relaunch. Oh my gosh, the photos are so great. And you've got all the
you.
posters of like the productions. You guys, you got to visit, check out her work. The video you released, a little clip of a yard, was so powerful. I watched it again this morning with my husband because I was just like, this person I'm interviewing today worked on this project. And he was just like, yeah, he was really
Which clip was it?
the one from a yard where it goes into in the men's prison, and it was the dance program.
Oh, you know what? That video is gorgeous and it's not mine. I can't take credit for that
Oh,
one.
oh, oh.
Yeah. Oh, I know what you're talking about. The video from A Yard at Lancaster Men's
Mm-hmm,
Prison.
mm-hmm,
Yes, that was a dance company.
mm-hmm.
And that footage is very difficult to get. I mean, it's very hard to film in there. But the Roots of Wings project had done work on the A Yard. We,
Okay.
they categorize by, yard, like it's A, B, and it kind of descends down into a really crazy yard. But
Oh,
yeah, we had done our pilot on A Yard, so that video that dance group did is incredible. Really
oh,
beautiful. But
I
that was
didn't know
yeah.
I didn't know that either about a yard, B. I was calling it a yard.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny.
Right now,
Yeah.
I get it though. It's like the outdoor time, right? And then where they're labeled like A, B, C, D, or
Yeah, like yeah, a yard is considered the honors yard at Lancaster. It's the honors yard. So they have a little bit more privilege and freedom, more programming. And you know what? I've only been to A and B out there, and even going to B, I was like, "Whoa, this is a crazy difference." You know, but Lancaster in general is a very frightening prison, very frightening prison. But already just going one down to B, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't imagine C, D, and the other ones." Like, whoa, it's crazy out there, you know.
tell us a bit about that. I had a proposition 10, 12 years ago when I was still living in Toronto to want to do an arts program in the prison system. And it's different in Canada than it is here, but I was met with no's at every turn. Like I didn't know how to they were just like, you can't. And as a woman, what are you talking about? Like they won't let a woman inside to. So when I came across you and saw the work you're doing, I'm like, maybe that's a too big of a question, but like what has that been like? Because I know you've had difficulties, right? Especially in light of the pandemic, but it seems like there would be obstacles anyway, regardless.
Enormous obstacles.
Mm-hmm.
Enormous obstacles. And then I'm always questioning myself, like, do I want to keep fighting for this? But that's a healthy question that you always have to ask. But yes, I mean, I think when I first started doing the work, I was in my 20s, and I started doing the work because somebody I loved very dearly was incarcerated when I was a teenager. And his incarceration really impacted me. And I was doing the time with him, always visiting him at the prison, on the phone every day, writing letters every day. And he went through a lot of very traumatic experiences. They murdered somebody in his unit and said he was next. And I mean, he saw it happen. So he had to go into, protective custody, into, a high security part of that facility. And so that was dramatic. It was just a lot, and I didn't realize how it would inform my own life path. But when I started going in, I was in my 20s. I was them, I was barely older than they were. So I think at that time, I just had a very tough exterior, but then I also came with a lot of love, and I would share my own work with them and talk with them, and I just tried to lead with love. But I think as I've grown older, I've evolved more into working with the adults, and again, I feel like I could be them. I could be any of those women. I mean, my ex-boyfriend, God bless him, like we're cool, we're friends. I have so much love for him, but I was put in some pretty bad predicaments that could have cost me my freedom many times over. 8 balls of cocaine having to be hidden in my bra while we're getting pulled over by the police, like stuff that's not cool, not funny, that could have cost me a lot of years of my own freedom. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like they are me and I am them. However, I'm equally compelled to do work out here. But I almost think that working, on the outs and creating productions is just as hard because there's more pretense out here. When you sit with the women, there's enormous solidarity and love. They just have each other's back in that space. And you can be yourself and you can talk about your hardships very freely, and there's no judgment, only love. Whereas out here, the artists work differently. There's way more layers, there's way more guard, there's way more ego. So it's very challenging. Do you know what I mean? To get all the way down into the heart-centered space and really make work from the bottom of your goal, your goals and your soul and your heart. It's challenging out here.
Yeah, that's a whole, it's almost like, it sort of feels like everything's stripped away in there. You can't have pretense anymore because you're all in there. I'm like, yeah, I'm taken aback by that, by how much realer and authentic it seems like the expression and the sharing and connection even is one day. That's a huge, I'm thinking of the word legacy in terms of what you do. And I don't think any of those women or men probably people in general who've worked with you will ever forget what you've done as an impact in their life. And I feel like that's going to be a big part of your legacy, which is something to be proud of. What do you hope people will remember about the life and work of Jessie Bliss?
Oh, Megan, you're so kind. I mean, I hope to help transform people, whether they're in an audience or in a prison, or I hope that the stories that I help tell, whether my own or whether telling stories in a collective, I hope they have an impact. And I hope that's the legacy, is the impact of the work, the impact of the stories, the impact of the solidarity like we're having here, you know, the impact of coming together and creating. I hope that that impact is the legacy, and that the words and the work live on, you know, and on and on. And that's like the beauty of art, is like you create something, and even though you bleed for it, and you're going to be giving like a part of yourself, right? You are, if you're really doing the work. But the beauty is that it will never ever go away. You know, it never ever leaves, and it's in the heart of everybody who participate in it forever.
No, I believe that to be true already, and that it's going to continue moving forward. I don't know the answer to this, but I want to ask you if you have any upcoming public, in person, or online writing workshops that people can join. And if not, how else can they or should they connect with you to like support your cause, what you're doing, how to like when your next production is? I want to know all the things. And I'm looking for a copy of your book because I have it here. I want to read something, or I want you to read something from it.
Oh, I don't even think I have a copy right now. I mean,
I do.
actually, I have some that are not assembled that I could grab. I think I do. Or
Do you?
you could
Okay.
be an excerpt. You could do
Either
it.
way, I'm sure they would love they hear my voice all the time. I love them to hear your
I'll
voice if you feel
I'll
comfortable.
grab my disassembled pages. But you know, it's a humbling question, because there's always something. And right now, it's you know, it's like I feel like I'm either planting seeds or watering them, you know, and I feel like the watering
Mm-hmm.
is a very external show, something the public can see. So it's a humbling moment where it's like the first time in many, many years of my life where I'm like, no, I'm actually working on a book right now, you know, of my plays and poems. So I'm, yeah, I'm making a collection really of plays and poems that's going to be I release hopefully early next year. So I'm working on that, which yeah, again, humbling, because I'm a person who likes to be in production. I like, you know, having a show out in public and being in production, working with a bunch of artists. So it's humbling to take this time to just, you know, write and incubate. So I'm working on that. And then again, we're writing a lot of grants right now. But yeah, so I'd say the best thing right now, we are doing a fundraiser for our work at the prison in Chino at CIW, California Institution for Women. We're raising money we need a lot of materials right now because they're having such a hard time accessing us. So we're printing lots of flyers that we can pass out so that they can circulate. A lot of the units in the prison are on lockdown because of COVID. So this way, when we're coming, whoever is not on lockdown can find us. And then we're trying to get stickers to put on all of our materials, like our writing packets that we bring them. So we're raising money right now to support that program. And Chino's far. I mean, it's a day's work. I go with my dear colleague Sigrid Gilmer, who's been a writer, and she's extraordinary. She's a part of, you know, the Roots and Wings project for like 8 or 9 years at this point. And so we go out there together, and it's been incredible to have her part of this project. So we're doing that fundraiser. But soon, as you know, start of the new year, next year we'll be rolling out shows and projects again. We just need to recalibrate. Should I grab my pages?
Yeah,
Okay, let me grab my
I
pages.
would love that.
Okay, let me see what I got here.
Yeah, for
And
those
that's
of you.
another thing, you know, the money also goes towards bringing them this book. You know, they like to have the book.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, getting them the copies and everything, you know, gets expensive. So money goes into that as well. Um, let's see. I'll just start right here. When the world fails to recognize the sheer and utter beauty that you are inside and out, it is time to do it for yourself. When people have tried to beat you down and shove you to the side like you do not matter, it is time to love yourself. When you have spent days and nights crying from the pain of your life experiences and the betrayal trusted others have done to you, it's time to love yourself. Loving yourself is an eternal weapon against any and every pain or hurt ever inflicted upon you. Loving yourself is the way to freedom. When you can't find it in you to love yourself right, look at the clouds, the stars, the sun, the moon, the mountains, the flowers, and know they are all loving you. Even in dark times, you are the light. You were put here to grow and shine and become the best possible you. You deserve every opportunity this life has to offer. And then here, I'll show a couple of images. I mean, this is a disassembled book that we're looking at here, but yeah, this is the cover art that Alfie
Mm-hmm.
designed specifically for the book. Oh yeah, you've got the cover right there.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like one of her gorgeous images. She's such a profound artist, Alfie. She's just incredible.
She really is. I started following her right after I met you. For those of you listening who can't see on YouTube, it's the main cover image is a woman with long flowing hair, and she's got like a big, I call it a mandala, but it could be like a crown, and then owls are nestled in her hair and her eyes are in shade, and it's just this beautiful, and then it's a golden cover, it kind of shimmers, and it is like Jesse said, it fits in the palm of your hand, and you can slide it into your shirt or your bra or your pocket or your purse. And I do carry it with me sometimes, to just refer back to if I know I'm going to a waiting room or something, you know what I mean, where I might be sitting. I'm like, rather than look at my phone, I will bring that with me. So I have my little earmarks for my favorite parts.
Oh, that
Yeah.
touches my heart. That touches my heart so deeply. It really does. And you're reminding me like that's the thing, we have freedom out here. Like that book won't get taken from you, right? Like and I love your show and I love the work that you're doing because that's I one of the great gifts of the work. It's like out here we can make things happen. And there's all these forces trying to shut us down and shut us up, but shows like this, and the work that you're creating and the voices that you're bringing around your show, it's like this is the freedom that we have, and when we do this we're doing it for them, you know what I mean? And that's why it's exciting to me to make work out here even though it's hard. But I think with everything we create, it's so great to remember, oh, like this is a gift that we can actually do this and that we have the freedom, as hard as it is, because it is hard, but we have the freedom to bring this work forward and to share it and move
Mhm.
it.
Yeah. Introducing it to more and more people, garnering support for you so you can keep doing this work. I want people to visit your website, therootsandwingsproject.com. On Instagram, is it also the roots? I can't remember because I've been following you so long.
Hey, it's the raw underscore project.
The Raw Project, the
Raw
Raw underscore
project.
Project.
Yeah, that's what it is on Instagram.
Okay. And
Yes.
then I will put those links in the show notes. And when my yoga audio also has a Instagram and a TikTok. So I'll provide links to all your channels on there
Thank
so people
you.
can just click on them, and you can send me any beautiful photos of yourself that you like that we can post to promote the episode. I would love that.
Absolutely.
Um,
Thank you.
yeah. Any parting thoughts that you want to share with listeners or viewers?
I want to say thank you, for being in this space with us and for taking the time to listen. And our hearts are connected, whether or not we can actually see each other. It's a true gift. So thank you so, so much.
Yeah.
And also, um, I think it's really important to fight actively for the women right here in our country. There are atrocities happening globally that also need our immediate attention. It's important to remember, though, that here women are fighting every single day in their homes, in their workplaces, in the streets for their own safety and their own human rights. And it's an emergency, and we all need to do everything that we can to protect ourselves and each other and to fight to make the world a safer place for women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Or take off
absolutely.
the right? A safe place. Let's just make it a
Yeah.
safe place.
Safer place where we treat
Yeah,
each other with love and dignity and respect and, yeah,
absolutely. We got to keep
equality.
that dream alive, that can be possible for us. We have to
Mm-hmm.
live that dream and not be, complacent in our work toward our own happiness is critical. And whenever we catch our breath, if we have something to give, that's really helpful too.
Hmm. Oh, it really is. And every son or daughter, every child born that we're raising, that we're changing even one little thing about their experience in the world and how they view others and what love is available to them. That's something too, whether you've birthed your own children or you're nurturing or working with others. Thank you for that reminder. Like, you're such a nurturer, like, to all those men and women, incarcerated or otherwise, even just in community. See, I've got to get you in touch with, oh my gosh, Griselda Osegueda, who was the previous guest on Maya. She's a producer, and she talked about that, how that saved her life, how somebody working with her and introducing her how to do community-based projects and screenwriting and all that took her out of what could have been a very negative turn and what was her reality right before that. But we can really make a difference in the life of even just one person.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, no, that's she sounds absolutely amazing. I mean, art is a savior. It saved my life. I mean, it gave me a positive direction and
Mm-hmm.
it gave me a place to pour my soul and my passion and yeah, you're right. I mean, because I feel like people discount it as corny, but it's not corny at all. It's about saving lives, and this work does do that, right? It actually does.
Transformative, as you said, you want your legacy to be transformative, and I believe that to be true.
Yeah, because look at, thank you for affirming that. I mean, the capability of the human spirit is profound. It really is like what we are capable of enduring
Mm-hmm.
and the gifts we're capable of giving. It's actually unbelievable. I feel like, it's easy to get caught up in the negative aspects, but if you think about it, what a miracle all of us are, and the fact that, right? Like that we have the ability to give so much to each other. It's amazing. And I believe there's more of that than there is of anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that will overcome. That's the hope. That's
That's
the
the
hope.
hope, that's the prayer,
Oh.
right? Oh, we can only do what we can do. And we have it within us to just do what we can and be kind to ourselves in that process. Because I know it can be frustrating for any of us to feel like, wow, I wish I had more capacity. And I think society's good at keeping us in the wheel and keeping
Mm-hmm.
us really, really busy and taking away our time and space, that we need to flourish. So it's like, I
Mm-hmm.
think we're all always fighting against that.
Yeah. And if we can, care for ourselves, model that for someone else, and then we have more that we can give when we're feeling a little more rested. So thank you
Exactly. I
for
mean,
that.
Audre Lorde would talk about that in her work, that self-care is actually it's an act of revolution, self-care. It actually is.
Mm-hmm.
It's political warfare
Mm-hmm.
to take care of ourselves, right? It's like what we've been conditioned not to do, right? But there's a beautiful movement toward it now.
Mm-hmm.
And
Thank
you're great at
goodness.
that. I mean, you're with your yoga practice, it's very inspiring.
Thank you. What started out as this channel, listeners know this, my yoga audio was intended originally just to be the practice of yoga and meditations. And then I had a guest on and they loved it so much. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll do like another few and then I'll have another guest. And I did a poll of listeners at the end of the first year. And they were like, I just redo the classes that you record. And then, but I really like listening to the interviews. But like, I'll go back, like, you have 6 or 7 different classes. You don't need to put like 100 on there. Like, we just want to meet more people. Like, how do you know these people? And so that was the storytelling. Everybody hearing somebody else's story, what wonderful work they're doing in the world, whether they're artists, writers, activists, all of the above, yoga teachers. So yeah, Maya has evolved into more so yoga out in the world. Like, what part are we doing out in the world, and what does yoga mean for you in your life, which you already answered that question like 100 times over so beautifully. So
Thank you.
thank
No,
you.
yoga, yeah, I've been practicing yoga most of my life, and it's such a gift. It is such a gift. So that's beautiful. I love how your show has evolved on its own. It took its own form
Mm-hmm.
and showed you what it wanted to be. Just like
Yeah.
our babies do that, right?
It's so true. Oh my
Yes,
gosh. You guys, you're so lucky. You have no idea how lucky you are to have met Jessie today. And maybe we'll have to have her back on and talk about, oh yeah, when your book is done, when you
yes,
get that. Oh my gosh.
yes.
I'll be first on the list.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here, and you're magnificent and beautiful in all ways. So really, I'm very grateful. Thank you for the time and space.
Yeah, you're so welcome. I feel like we're like related somehow from the
I
moment that I met you. And we all, just so y'all know, we took a few moments before we started and really felt, presence coming in, ancestral or otherwise, just standing all around us. And so I really hope that everybody who listens, who watches, understands the power of what happens when people come together and support one another. And it may not always look like what you think it's going to look like, but what a profound change. Just two people just having this conversation how many years later after we first met, and we knew, and we weren't afraid of like, okay, this is weird, but I feel like I know you and we need to keep in touch, and not being afraid of that, just like going with what that feeling is, and look how you can support one another as time goes by. I could talk to you all day.
I know, likewise. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. But it's a true gift too, and you speak this we speak the same language. The minute we met, we knew that, and that's important and to be honored. So thank you so much. I look
Yeah.
forward to more. There's gonna be more conversations that we're gonna have.
Absolutely. And next time, Jesse's LA based, but I know you come to Sacramento sometimes. So we have to like figure out a way to make that happen, and make some time for a coffee or a walk or dinner or something like
Let's
that in
do it.
person.
I would love that. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Must. It's a must. And thanks for your support of the work. Really, thank you so much for supporting the women in the work.
absolutely. So I'm going to encourage everybody else to do that too. I'll put some links in the show notes and on social media, and I will be updating the website soon with all our most recent guests. I'll put all the links there so you won't have to search too hard to find them. And thanking Jessie again for making the time to be here today, for her daughter, for sharing that time with us, for the people you work with at the Roots and Wings Project, and all throughout your life, for sharing your very valuable and sacred time with us. Listeners, please give us some feedback on this episode. I know you're currently really resonating with Griselda's episode, and I love it. You've been answering the Spotify questions and commenting on TikTok and on YouTube, actually. So I want to continue to get that feedback from you. And if you have questions for Jessie or for me, please let me know. myyogaaudio@gmail.com. All right. And until next time, remember, it's always a great time for your mind and your body and your soul to be on the mat, wherever it may be. I'm your host, Megan Morgan, signing off for now.